What if I told you a case that looked completely finished just got even more dangerous? Because when news broke that most of Blake Lively's lawsuit against Justin Baldoni had been thrown out, people rushed to one conclusion. They thought it was over, that it had collapsed, that one side had already won. But that's not what actually happened. In fact, what just unfolded might have made this situation even more intense than before. A federal judge dismissed 10 out of 13 claims in the case. On paper, that sounds like a total shutdown. And for a moment, it looked like everything Blake had brought forward was falling apart. But the reason those claims were dismissed is where things start to shift. It came down to one technical detail that changed the entire direction of the case. The court ruled that Blake wasn't legally considered an employee. Instead, she was classified as an independent contractor. And that single classification stripped away a major layer of protection her legal team was relying on. Suddenly, arguments that once seemed strong were being judged under a completely different standard. And online, people immediately split. Some saw it as a massive win for Justin. Others felt like it was a loophole that changed the game unfairly. But here's where it gets more complicated, because the judge didn't just dismiss the claims and move on. The reasoning behind the decision introduced something that has everyone arguing. The court pointed out that a lot of the behavior being questioned happened during filming, within scenes, as part of acting. One moment that kept coming up was a slow dancing scene, where physical interaction was expected as part of the performance. And legally, that matters, because the judge viewed those actions as something directed at a character, not necessarily at Blake as a person. Add to that the argument that actors need creative freedom to perform without constantly fearing legal consequences, and suddenly the entire situation looks very different in a courtroom. To some people, that explanation makes sense. To others, it feels like a dangerous line. And that's exactly why this case didn't end when those claims were dismissed. Because despite everything that got thrown out, 3 claims are still very much alive. And they might be the most important ones of all. Retaliation, breach of contract, and the bigger story behind them. Here's the part most people are missing. Even though the harassment-related claims were dismissed as standalone legal arguments, they didn't disappear. They're still allowed to be presented in court as supporting evidence. Which means Blake can't sue under that category directly. But she can still tell her version of what happened. She can still explain the situation, and more importantly, she can use it to support a much bigger claim. Because from her perspective, this was never just about what happened on set. It was about what happened after she spoke up. According to her side, once concerns were raised, everything started to shift. The narrative around her began to change. Public perception started turning. And she believes that wasn't random. She believes it was intentional. That's where the idea of a smear campaign comes in. The claim is that after she raised concerns, there was a coordinated effort to damage her reputation and career. And if that's proven, it changes everything about how this case is viewed. Because now it's not just about one moment, it's about a chain of events, and that's exactly what makes this situation so explosive. Because Justin Baldoni's side is pushing back just as hard. His legal team has come out strongly, saying they were completely blindsided by the accusations from the very beginning. They claim their defense has been built on transparency, pointing to text messages and documents that they believe show the full picture. They're not just denying the allegations, they're doubling down, saying none of it happened the way it's being described. And after the recent ruling, they're treating it like validation, like proof that their side of the story is finally being recognized. But even that isn't as straightforward as it seems, because just weeks earlier, things weren't looking great for Justin's team at all. A judge had criticized parts of their legal strategy, calling some arguments weak and questioning why certain claims were even filed in the first place. Some aspects of their case were seen as lacking proper evidence. Others were criticized for involving parties without a clear connection to the situation. There were no major penalties, but the criticism was enough to raise serious questions, which makes this sudden shift feel less like a clean win and more like a turning point in a much messier battle. And now, instead of clarity, we're left with something far more complicated. 2 completely different narratives, 2 sides that both believe they're right, and an audience that's already divided. Some people believe the backlash Blake faced happened naturally. that it came from how things were handled publicly, especially around the promotion of the film. Others are convinced there's something deeper going on, something more calculated behind the scenes, and that divide isn't getting smaller, it's getting louder. Because at this point, this isn't just about what happened anymore. It's about what people believe happened, and that's what makes what's coming next so important. Because all of this is building toward a trial expected to take place in May 2026. After years of buildup, delays, and constant back and forth, everything is about to be put in front of a jury. And when that happens, the rules change. It's no longer just about legal definitions or technical classifications. It becomes about storytelling, about credibility, about which version of events feels more real when everything is laid out. Because in the end, it won't just come down to what can be proven. It'll come down to what people believe. Both sides are confident, neither is backing down. And with the amount of time, money, and reputation already invested, walking away doesn't even seem like an option anymore. This is heading straight toward a moment where everything gets decided at once. And until that happens, the tension just keeps building. So now the real question is, when all of this finally plays out in court, who actually comes out on top?